Hi guys, Magic, your friendly neighborhood vampire witch here. We're back with Magium, chapter 10. We are trying to keep Barry alive. So I guess we'll see how that goes. I believe previously we were captured by animals and then now ogres. And I think Petal might have betrayed us, and that's upsetting, but I also think this might be part of her plan to get us out of there safely, so I really hope that's all this is. But we'll find out. So let's get into it. I can't believe that we managed to get ourselves imprisoned twice in 2 days, Hadrick says. And by animals and ogres to boot. If word gets out, we're going to become the laughingstock of the tournament. It has now been close to 6 hours since we were teleported to our prison cell. I can tell because my stat device also shows me the hour of the day, in addition to my stats. Otherwise, it would have been almost impossible to find out how much time had passed, because not only are there no windows in our cell, but also no sources of light whatsoever, except for the small light coming from my stat booster screen. For the past few hours, we've been trying to shake off the permanent paralysis effect of our prison cell and to come up with a plan to fool the ogre guards into releasing us. So far, we've made no significant progress on either front. Darren and Hadrick managed to remove their paralysis spells temporarily by focusing all their magical energy into giving their muscles a powerful jolt, but they were barely able to move 3 feet before the spell was automatically cast on them once more. Of the 5 of us trapped here, I appear to be the only one that can move my hands, even if only slightly. It turns out that the partial resistance to paralysis is one of the perks I get from being a Lasathi, along with a higher than average resistance to electricity. That being said, this newfound ability of mine hasn't really helped me much, except for being able to take the stat device out of my pocket in order to use it as a makeshift candle. Seeing that we couldn't free ourselves from the paralysis spell, we decided to shift our focus towards engineering a plan to have the ogres open the door and cancel the spell for us. Unfortunately, despite their renowned stupidity, the ogres were under strict orders to not let us go under any circumstances, and they were much too afraid of their captain to risk going against his wishes. Rose hasn't spoken a single word since we got imprisoned. Iluna's betrayal must have really affected her. The rest of us aren't exactly in the best moods either, but we are far from having given up. Since the ogres are afraid of letting us die of starvation because of our collars, we are expecting them to come bring us food sooner or later. At the moment they open the door, Darren and Hadrick will use their muscle jolt techniques and make a run for it in the short time they have at their disposal before they get paralyzed again. They will then find the control panel that cancels the paralysis spell, and we'll all be free to roam their stronghold at our leisure. It's not a perfect plan, but it's better than to just roll over and accept our fates. That accursed banshee, Darren says. I knew from the beginning that she was plotting something. We were so heavily under-equipped for this mission that I had no choice but to accept Flower's help when she offered it, but now I'm starting to regret that I didn't listen to my instincts instead. I want to have faith. Actually, I'm not so sure that she has really betrayed us. Have you gone daft? Darren asks me. No, think about it for a second, I tell him. When she was asked how to deal with us, she purposely omitted the fact that our collars are set to electrocute us if we distance ourselves too much from each other. She only told the shaman about our 5-day limit. What if she was just buying time so that she could walk around the stronghold's premises unhindered in order to map out its layout? You're overthinking this, Barry, Darren says. It's probably just the fact that the collars would have exploded anyway after electrocuting us. Running out the clock was likely the only way they could have killed us safely, otherwise she would have mentioned something else. I don't think that's true, Kate says. Even if we take into account the fact that the Lasathi were significantly more technologically advanced than any of the currently predominant races, there's just no way that such small devices could blow up this entire fort. If there really is a self-destruct mechanism implanted in these collars, I doubt that it could take out more than a room full of ogres. I think the Banshee knew this fact, and she was banking on the ogres' lack of expertise on this particular subject when she lied to them about it. I'm sorry to burst your bubble, Kate, but this all sounds like wishful thinking to me, Hadrick says. You don't really think that the Banshee is just going to show up here to open our cell, cancel the paralysis spell, and tell us that everything was her plan all along, do you? Almost immediately after the dwarf finishes his question, we hear one of the ogre guards from outside our cell shouting loudly. "Halt!" he says. "You're not permitted to go any further. Turn back now, or..." The ogre stops mid-sentence, and the next thing we hear is a loud thump outside the door. "Ha!" I hear Raka's voice through the stone walls of our cell. That ogre must have been so focused on forming a coherent sentence that he even noticed his head being cut off. "Do you ever shut up?" Aluna asks her. "Hey, you let me out of this amulet. I promise you won't hear a word from me ever again," Raka says as she starts laughing. A few moments later, I can feel the paralysis slowly starting to wear off as I start to regain control of my limbs. Shortly afterwards, our cell door creaks open and we see Aluna standing in front of us with her usual displeased expression on her face. "Well, what are you waiting for?" she says. "Get up. That chalice isn't going to steal itself." Seeing that none of us are saying anything, Aluna starts to speak again. "The girl told you before coming here that we had a secret plan, didn't she?" she says. "Well, this is that plan. I'm busting you out. Now come on, we shouldn't be lingering too much time in one place." "Yeah, I'm not buying it," Darren says. "I'm much more inclined to believe that your deal with the ogres didn't work out as well as you were hoping, and now you're trying to use us to get back at them. The proof is that you didn't tell us about your plan beforehand." "I couldn't tell you beforehand, you oaf," Aluna says. "Your reactions needed to be genuine when I betrayed you. The shaman can tell from your auras if you're actually shocked or just pretending. That is the reason why I had to put Flower to sleep. As a banshee, I'm the only one who the shaman can't read, because I am in complete control of my emotions, as well as my aura fluctuations." "Oh yeah," Darren says. "Well, why don't you wake the girl up then, so she can confirm all of this herself?" "The stasis I put Flower in cannot be undone forcefully without risking serious complications," Aluna says. "The spell usually lasts 2 days, so I didn't have the time to wait for her to wake up before coming to rescue you." "How convenient," Darren says. The banshee frowns at him. "If you don't feel like breaking out of this cell, then I'll just take the others with me and leave you here to rot," she says. "Oh, I'll come with you, but don't worry," Darren says. "But as soon as I get my sword back, you are in for a world of hurt." "I see," Aluna says. She gestures with her hand, and all of our weapons come floating inside the cell. "I'm not going to lie. That would be a bit problematic for me." Oops. She then gestures with her right hand towards us, and my dagger and crossbow get thrown in my lap, while at the same time Kate's dagger gets thrown into her right hand. The banshee then grabs Darren's sword, and she eyes him intently. Darren tries to get up, but the effect of the paralysis still hasn't completely worn off, so he staggers on his feet. After looking at him for a few seconds, Aluna decides to throw his sword to me instead. "Here, you take it," the banshee tells me. "You seem to have a decent head on your shoulders, and you know him better than I do. I'll let you decide whether to give him the sword or not, given the circumstances." "Barry," Darren says as he gets up and starts walking towards me, "give me the sword." He's got that look in his eyes again. I know that look. He isn't thinking straight. He's going to attack Aluna as soon as I give him his weapon back, isn't he? Just what am I supposed to do here exactly? Whoa, geez, that's a tough one. "I'll give you the sword on one condition," I tell him. "You have to swear not to attack Aluna with it." "Again with this?" Darren says. "Don't tell me that you actually believe her lies." "It doesn't matter what I think," I say. "Either way you look at it, this isn't the time to be fighting each other. Now, are we going to swear it or not?" Darren frowns at me. "Fine, I'll swear it," he says, "but only until we're all safe distance from the ogre fort." "Good enough for me," I say, and I toss him the sword. As the 5 of us exit our cell, Aluna makes a gesture with her right hand, and a stone dislodges itself from a nearby wall. Darren's shield then comes floating out of the hole in the wall and into Darren's hand. "I don't understand," Darren says. "Why did the ogres place my shield inside of a wall?" "They didn't," Aluna says. "It was stashed in the same place as all the other weapons. I hid it here before unlocking your cell to make sure I had the upper hand, in case you decided to challenge me again, like you did last night. Now then, if we're all done here, I suggest we get going. I already found out where they're holding the chalice." Thank goodness, Petal. "Is that all?" Rose asks with an uncharacteristically furious expression on her face, while a tear is forming in one of her eyes. "Is that all you're going to say after what you did to us?" "I already told you," Aluna says. "I had to keep the truth from you in order to make sure that your reactions were genuine. It was all necessary for carrying out our plan." "Oh yeah?" Rose asks. "And what about all those mean things you said before we got teleported to our cell? What about when you said that I was too trusting for my own good and that I was a fool for not listening to Darren? Was all that necessary too? As Rose finished asking her question, I could see Luna's cold expression change for a brief moment. In that one moment, she almost seemed human. No, Luna says after a short pause, it was not. I only said all that because I wanted to get back at you for not letting me rest the other night. I overreacted. I apologize. The fury in Rose's eyes disappeared upon hearing Luna's words. She looked a bit confused. I don't think she was expecting such an honest apology. Well, as long as you won't do it again, Rose says. Araka starts laughing hysterically. Luna, apologizing? She says, quick, find a place to hide. Barricade yourselves. The world as we know it may well be coming to an end. I told you to be quiet, Luna says. Hey, if you want to shut me up, you can just close the amulet like you always do. Araka says, oh wait, if you do that, you'll lose your precious map that we spent all of those hours in the library to put together. I guess you'll just have to put up with me for a while longer then. I hadn't really paid much attention to this semi-transparent magical hologram floating in front of Luna until Araka mentioned it, but now I realize that it is in fact a miniature version of the Ogre Stronghold. Not only that, but there are also colored dots inside it that are continuously moving. I can only assume that the moving dots represent the Ogre patrols from the Stronghold, and that the 6 dots standing in place on the upper level on the left wall must represent our own group. That's amazing, Kate says. This entire detailed hologram is being maintained by Araka? Yes, Luna says. We spent a few hours in the library documenting the Stronghold's layout in order to recreate it as accurately as possible. Araka's magical sense is powerful enough that she can easily detect all living creatures in our area, even if their auras are being masked by that pesky shaman spell that also grants invisibility, so she can just display them as dots on the map for all of us to see. With this much information in our hands, the ogres could not surprise us. So we've encountered no resistance while we cleaned out this entire floor and hid the bodies. Okay, why do the dots have different colors? The blue dots are the mages, the red dots are the warriors, the green dot is the shaman, and the purple dot is the captain, Luna says. She can tell the difference? Kate asks. Yes, Luna says. If your magical sense is good enough, you can make the distinction quite easily based on their level of magical power, or even their unique aura signatures. Right now, we need to make it all the way to the lowest level of the main building where their treasury is being located. Hold on, Hedrick says. Before we get going, I think there's still one more issue that needs to be cleared up. The shaman called you a Luna of the Sacred Woods massacre earlier, and he said that you killed hundreds of animals without mercy. What was all that about? Oh, I can answer this question for her. Araka, I swear if you don't shut up, Luna says. Araka says, you'll what? Luna doesn't say anything. That's what I thought, Araka says. So anyway, as I was saying, in order to better understand the events of the Sacred Woods massacre, I need to tell you a little story first. It's a story about 3 young banshees that I decided to take under my wing out of the kindness of my heart a few hundred years ago. Their names were Sidara, Yunuri, and Aluna. Wait, you used to be Aluna's guardian? Hedrick asks. Oh boy. No, I used to be her mentor, Araka says. I was the one being that she looked up to the most. I remember the 3 of them once saying that they wanted to be like me when they grew up. That was before they knew who I really was, of course. I spent years of my life teaching them everything I knew. I taught them how to defend themselves from banshee hunters and white mages. I taught them how to tell when their bodies were starting to reject them so they could start looking for new hosts in good time. In other words, I taught them how to survive. That was awfully nice of you, Kate says with a frigid tone in her voice. I know, right? Araka says. It was all a sham, of course. To tell you the truth, I was starting to get a little bored with the small amount of suffering I could bring to the world while trapped in weak animal bodies. So this time I decided to try something a little different. I spent years of my life making myself into this sort of motherly figure for the 3 young banshees, all in order to make it more painful for them when I inevitably betrayed them. But as time passed, my original perspective began to change. As I got to know the 3 banshees better, I started to grow fond of Aluna. She was my star pupil, after all, and she reminded me a bit of myself when I was her age, so instead of simply having her killed along with the others, I decided to instead shape her in my own image. Araka, that's enough, Luna says. But of course, in order to shape her into my own image, I needed to utterly destroy her first, Araka continues, ignoring Luna. So I started to teach her even more than I taught the others. I made sure that she knew all kinds of obscure techniques and that she could control her water element to perfection. Then when the time came, I led them all into one of the sacred woods. It's easy to get them to follow me. They all trusted me with their lives, and they didn't know that I was taking them into the forbidden territory. Poor Yunuri and Sidara were no match for the valiant guardians of the forest, and Luna was not strong enough to fight all the animals by herself while also protecting her friends. Araka, I'm warning you, Luna says. Oh, and Luna was simply adorable, Araka says. Did I tell you? Back then she absolutely refused to kill other living creatures unless she had no other choice. She would be depressed for days after changing hosts because she'd been forced to end someone's life without their consent. Needless to say, even in a dire situation such as this, Luna still refused to kill the animals and simply incapacitated them. I know this because I was watching the whole thing from a bubble, laughing continuously. They didn't understand what I was doing at first. They kept calling for me, begging me to save them like I always did. They saw all of their events unfold before their eyes, but their minds simply couldn't comprehend them. It was only when Yunuri and Sidara got impaled that the cold, hard reality finally hit Luna in the face. As Araka speaks, I can feel Luna's aura starting to fluctuate violently. This is the first time I've seen her exhibit such strong emotions about something. Usually the flow of her aura is almost indiscernible from that of the air around her. She kept shouting at the animals to let her pass, Araka says. She kept telling them to get out of her way, but they wouldn't listen. So in a fit of rage, Luna exterminated every single one of those guardians, leaving no survivors. And then she hurried over to her friend's side, grabbing their lifeless bodies and shaking them desperately as if she were expecting them to suddenly come back to life. Please, she said. Don't leave me, she said. I don't want to be alone. Luna closed the amulet and gripped it firmly in her fist. I could see her hand shaking as she held onto the amulet. Man. And I think I could almost hear a small crack coming from it just as Araka warned her. The hologram of the fort disappeared almost as soon as she closed the locket. Bring it back, Luna says curtly as she opens the amulet again. Araka says, bring what back? Oh, you mean the hologram? The hologram's gone. Didn't you see it go poof? I'll need hours to recreate it again. You should have listened to me when you had the chance, but no, you just had to be your old stubborn self again. And I said, bring it back, Luna shouts at her. A brief pause followed Luna's words, during which nobody spoke a word. All right, fine, Araka says after a while, and she conjures back a miniature ogre fort with all its details still intact. I swear, you have absolutely no sense of humor. I don't know how that girl puts up with you. Luna ignores Araka and she turns to Hadrick. I trust that Araka's explanation about the Sacred Woods massacre will suffice, she asks him with a dark look on her face. Or would you perhaps like to hear more details? No, Hadrick says. I think I'm good. Thanks. Poor Luna. Luna then turns around and starts leading us to the lower levels as we follow her in silence. Thanks to Araka's map, we were able to successfully avoid most of the guards as we made our way towards the treasure room. The ones that we couldn't avoid were quickly and silently dispatched by Luna. Her way of doing things was completely opposite to Flowers. She was cold and calculated, and she would use the girl's athletic prowess to her advantage when going in for the kill. And every time she had to take out an ogre guard, she climbed one of the walls, position herself above him, and then hang from the ceiling to deliver the finishing blow. It took us less than half an hour to reach the treasure room, situated at the lowest level of the Stronghold's main building. There were only 2 guards at the entrance, who were easily dealt with. However, even if we made sure to hide all the bodies on our way here, it's likely only a matter of time before an ogre patrol realizes something is wrong and raises the alarm. We're going to need to move fast and get out of here before that happens. Upon entering the ogre's treasury, I could see that it was filled with mountains upon mountains of gold, as well as dozens of coffers which had all manners of jewels and fineries inside of them. If I only had my enchanted backpack with me now, I would have filled it to the brim with treasure. Still, there's plenty of rooms in my pockets for me to stash a few of these small, expensive gems. The diamonds in particular should fetch me a hefty sum in any respectable market. After all, when will I ever get a chance like this again? I mean, Aladdin says only go after what you're going for. You've seen how that turns out. I'm gonna play it safe. I resist the urge to fill my pockets with priceless gems and continue forward. A few moments later, the six of us stop in front of a marble pedestal on top of which lies the chalice we've come here to retrieve. Of course it is. Don't make any loud noises, Aluna tells us in a low voice. The ogre captain and his troops are standing right beyond that wall from behind the chalice. Which one's the ogre captain? Hadrick asks as he stares at the fort hologram. The purple dot, Aluna says. The red dots scattered around him are his troops. How come the room they are in isn't marked on the map? Kate asks. It's because it didn't appear in any of the building plans that we studied in the library, Aluna says. It's probably a hidden room that they use for their top secret meetings. The way they place the chalice on top of a pedestal like that just screams trap to me, Darren says. Was there any documentation regarding the traps they're using to defend this room? Unfortunately, no, Aluna says, and I'm not sensing any magic around it either. If there are any traps, they're going to be similar in nature to those from the ruins. Can we even be sure that we've got the right chalice? Hadrick says. I mean, it looks like it, but they could have easily made a fake one and placed it in plain sight to throw us off course. There's an easy way to test its authenticity, Luna says, and she uses her water magic to fill the chalice with water. After a few seconds, the water inside it starts to radiate magic, and then it begins to shine brightly as if there was a small sun floating right above it. That settles it, Luna says. This is the chalice we are looking for. She then grabs it off the pedestal and empties it of water, and as we all look around us, see if any traps get activated. Huh, Hadrick says. I guess we overestimated the ogres a bit when we assumed they were smart enough to actually come up with The dwarf doesn't get it to finish his sentence as the floor below us quickly starts to rotate along with us and the wall behind the pedestal. 2 seconds later, we find ourselves standing in a room full of ogres with the captain of the stronghold grinning at us maliciously. I suspected the banshee from the start, the captain says in his broken common. I told great shaman he make mistake for trusting banshee, but shaman no listen. I knew you come here sooner or later with your friends to steal treasure, so I wait for you in secret ambush room. These are my finest warriors, and they all thirst for blood. No banshee or human leave this place alive tonight. Araka starts laughing. Is that a fact, Fatso? She says. Darren wastes no time and he rushes towards the captain, but the ogre was ready for him and he hit him with his club as soon as he got within range. Darren instinctively placed his shield between himself and the ogre's weapon, but the force behind the hit was so great that it sent him flying into the nearby wall. Hadrick is the next one who dashes towards the captain, and the ogre hits him with his club as well. The dwarf stops the weapon by putting his hands above his head, and the floor below them is beginning to crumble from the impact of the club's strike. While the two of them duel, Aluna starts to apply some pressure to the other ogres by using her water whips, while doing cartwheels all over the place in order to avoid getting hit by their clubs. Not bad for a puny dwarf, the captain says, but let me ask something. Does dwarf know what lies beneath stronghold floor? Yeah, it's called a hill, Hadrick says. They're kind of like mountains, only smaller. I can draw you a picture to make it easier to understand if you want. That is only partially correct, dwarf, the captain says, with a wicked grin. It's true that there is a hill below us, but inside this hill there is abandoned mines, which was used by goblins before us. The wood is scaffolding leading down, must be rotting by now. The two of us are standing right above the cave wall, but I can't say the same about your friends. There is 300-foot drop until the floor of mines. Can your friends be flying, dwarf? The captain then roars loudly, and all of his troops fall back towards the middle of the room. Aluna takes advantage of this, and she uses her water whip to behead all of them in a single motion. Over here, she says as she waves to us from the middle of the ogre's corpses. This must be one of the safe areas. Quick. The ogre captain grins wildly upon hearing Aluna's word. He kicks Hadrick out of his way and readies his club to smash the floor from underneath us. I feel like that's a trap. Well, He seems way too happy about that. I mean, I trust Luna. Thought she'd let us fall, but I'm going to try to stay put first. No, I tell Rose and Kate, don't move. That's exactly what he wants us to do. Just stay where you are. The two of them hesitate for a second, but after looking me in the eye, they both decide to trust my judgment and stay behind with me. Seriously, Luna says as the ogre captain smashes his club into the ground. The floor starts to shatter, but as I predicted, the cracks in the ground stop forming right in front of us. It turns out that we were standing above one of the underground cave walls, just like Hadrick and the ogre captain. Luna reacts quickly by jumping on a wall and using it to propel herself to her position before the floor crumbles beneath her feet. Well, what do you know? She says. You were actually right. Darren! Rose shouts while looking down inside the chasm that has formed in the middle of the room. Looking inside the pit, I see that Darren is hanging from a wooden beam, which is beginning to crack under his weight. I'd completely forgotten that he'd got thrown into the wall at the beginning of the fight. He must have still been in a dazed state when the floor started crumbling. As I looked below to see if there were any footholds I could use to get him, I realized that even if I managed to somehow reach his position, there's just no way that I could climb back up. The wooden scaffolding is particularly unstable at this point. All that's left of it are some support pillars and a few beams here and there that look like they could break any second. Stay where you are! Darren shouts at us. Whatever you do, don't come down here. Don't worry, I have everything under control. He's lying. At most, he's got half a minute before that beam breaks under his weight, and he has no way of climbing back up. He must be trying to protect us. You bastard! Hadrick shouts at the ogre captain as he clashes with him once again. You were the one who told the ogres that the middle of the room was a safe area, weren't you? Were those soldiers' lives worth nothing to you? Heh. The captain says, those finest warriors, they were just cannon fodder. All of them replaceable. I alone strong enough to deal with the lot of you. Look below. One of your friends already at end of his rope. The rest of you are going to follow him soon. The beam that Darren is holding onto cracks sadly. He doesn't have much time left. Completely out of the blue, Aluna jumps past us and into the pit. She uses one of the wooden pillars to propel herself back toward the cave's wall, which she then uses to push herself further down to the pit and back towards the wooden pillars. She jumps back and forth between the pillars and the wall a few times until she finally reaches Darren's level. She then grabs the cave's wall with her left hand. She extends her right hand towards Darren. Healer, grab my hand, Aluna says. Like hell I will, Darren says. The wooden beam cracks in. This time it looks like it's about to break. Healer, there's no time, Aluna shouts. Grab my damn hand. Darren looks at her hesitantly for a few seconds, but he doesn't get the time to think on it any further because the wooden beam finally cracks under his weight, and he starts falling into the chasm. Aluna pushes herself into the wall with all of her strength and jumps towards Darren, grabbing him with her right hand. As the two of them fall into the pit, they start shining brightly. Right before they reach the ground, they disappear and then reappear on the floor in front of us, safe and sound. No! The ogre captain shouts as he tries to smash Hadrick with his club again. What's the matter? Hadrick asks him as he blocks his strike yet again. Didn't you say that you'd easily deal with a lot of us by yourself? You should be glad that you've been granted the opportunity to finish us all off with your own hands. Luna, can't you help him? Rose asks. I don't know how much longer Hadrick can keep this up. The ogre's wearing anti-magic armor from head to toe, Luna says. This means that I can't make my water sharp against him, so my whips and arrows are out of the question. Normally I'd use one of my whips to pull him into the chasm, but he's just too big and heavy for me to move with the amount of magical energy I have at my disposal. My stronger spells would probably penetrate his defenses, but they aren't designed to hit a single target, so I'd risk hitting the dwarf along with the ogre captain if I used them. There must be something we can do, Rose says. Hey, dwarf, Araka shouts loudly. Remember how I told you that the ogre's weak spot is the base of their necks? It's time for you to put that secret technique I taught you to good use. Hadrick laughs. Aye, he says, grinning wildly. I suppose it's time for me to stop fooling around. The ogre captain suddenly stops attacking Hadrick, and he uses his club to guard his neck. Hadrick focuses all of his aura in his right fist, and he punches a hole through the ogre's chest armor, making the captain fall on his knees, drop his club, and start coughing up blood. Hadrick seizes the opportunity, grabs the ogre's club, and throws it inside the chasm. Why? The ogre asks as he coughs up more blood. Why did go for chest instead of neck? Wasn't secret technique supposed to aim for weak point? Hadrick and Araka both start laughing simultaneously. There was no secret technique, you moron, Araka says. I only said that to make you panic and focus all your defense on a single point. I guess it only took 2 of us to defeat you after all, Hedrick says, grinning. Maybe you should have brought some real soldiers with you instead of small fries. This is not yet... Oh, this not over yet, dwarf, the ogre says, and he coughs some more. I'm going to crush your puny head, and Hedrick doesn't let the ogre finish his threat, and he crushes his head between his hands. As the ogre's lifeless body drops to the ground, the dwarf jumps over to our side of the room and grins at Araka. That wasn't half bad for a spirit of joy and laughter, he tells her. You certainly earned your quota for the day for making me laugh to my heart's content. Well, seriously now, Araka says, I couldn't let them kill the only person in this entire group who laughs at my jokes. You can buy me a beer when I get out of this amulet. I'm not sure how that's going to work, though, since I'll probably kill you all within seconds of escaping. Have you gone out of your mind, Banshee? Darren shouts furiously all of a sudden. Who, me? Araka asks. Not you, Darren says, the other Banshee. Why? Because I teleported you out of the pit? Luna says, you're not seriously going to start claiming that you could have gotten out of there yourself, are you? Of course not, Darren says. I was about to die, and then you saved me. Why would you save me? My death would have benefited you in every way, and no one would have blamed you if you left me to die. What could you possibly have hoped to achieve from this? I see no reason to justify my actions to you, Luna says. Figure it out yourself. Darren's face is so red with anger that he looks like he might explode any second. We've got no time for this, Kate says. Look at the map. All the ogres that were sleeping are waking up and taking their stations. The others are frantically patrolling the halls, as if they were looking for something. They must have discovered one of the dead bodies and raised the alarm. The shaman has just left his quarters, and he's assembling a team to follow him. That means we won't be able to sneak out of the fort through the front gate anymore, Luna says. I don't think it's a good idea to fight all these ogres head on. Luckily for us, the room we are in right now isn't marked in any of the building plans, so most patrols aren't very likely to come searching for us here. Our best bet is to descend into the cavern below us and then to follow the underground tunnels until we reach the exit at the base of the hill. How are we going to get all the way down there with the scaffolding broken? While I was falling earlier, I saw that there was another scaffolding right below the room beyond the wall on our right, Luna says. It appeared to be in good condition, so there should be no problem in climbing all the way down to the bottom of the mines. Can't you just cast your teleportation spell from earlier? Hedrick asks. You know, the one you used to rescue Darren from the pit? No, I can only cast that spell once a day, Luna says. It's the same for the golden cage spell I used to trap you when we entered the fort. That's why I didn't use it on those ogres while I was fighting them. So you could have still cast the teleportation spell now, if not for me, Darren says. Yes, but the spell only allows me to teleport one other person with me, so it wouldn't have been much use to us here, Luna says. Plus, it has the very limited range, so it's not like I can use it for travel either. I rarely get the chance to use that spell, to be honest. How can we be sure that the underground mines won't just lead us to a dead end? We found a pretty detailed map of the tunnels in the ogre's library, Luna says. Araka, do you think you could add to the map of the fort? Yeah, give me a second, Araka says. A few moments later, a new level gets added to the fort's hologram, showing us the layout of the underground tunnels in detail. The caverns appear to indeed to have an exit, but there are several ogre mages stationed in front of it. There are guards at the exit, Luna says. Good, that means that the tunnels are still being used to a certain extent, so there should be no cave-ins blocking our path. All right then, Hedrick says. I'm going to go smash that through that wall so we can get to the other room. After Hedrick destroys the wall, we see that the floor in the middle of the adjacent room has also crumbled after the ogre's smash. The cave wall from our side of the pit and the one on the opposite side seem to extend all the way to the end of the other room, and probably beyond it as well. Just as Iluna said, the scaffolding below the other room seems to be mostly intact, and it shouldn't be too risky to climb down the wooden ladders until we reach the bottom. Let's get going, Darren says, before the ogres find this room where the shaman tells them about it. It took us a few minutes to climb down all the ladders, but there was no incidents, and we all arrived safely at the bottom of the mines. The only source of light that we have at the moment is Araka's hologram, but it's shining brighter than a torch, and the map's tunnels is very exact, so there's no danger of us getting lost. I think one of the ogre mages that were accompanying the shaman just teleported near the ones guarding the tunnel exit, Kate says. I saw one of the blue dots disappearing from above, and another one appearing below. He was probably sent as a messenger to tell the other ogres to be on their guard. Luna says. Yeah, they're turning invisible as we speak. A lot of the good that'll do. But won't it be hard to fight them even with the map while they are invisible? Their invisibility spell they are using cannot be maintained during combat, Aluna says. They're only using it for the element of surprise. They'll be forced to reveal themselves once the fight begins. Araka's right, the spell will do them no good whatsoever. As we get closer to the exit, we see that the ogres in the fort are starting to flock towards the secret room, and some of them have already reached the scaffolding. The shaman's group seems to be heading that way as well. Damn it, Hadrick says. The shaman must have tipped them off about the secret room. If we don't pick up our pace, we'll end up getting surrounded. Wait, don't move, Araka says. Something's wrong. I can feel it. Give me a minute. We don't have a minute, Darren says. The shaman and his ogres are breathing down our necks. Why would there be something wrong? I don't know yet, Araka says. That's why I said I need a minute. Maybe there are traps ahead of us, Rose asks. I doubt it, Hadrick says. Given that there are guards stationed at the exit, I'm guessing that these tunnels are still being used as a potential escape route in case the fort is under siege. I don't see why they would want to risk running into their own traps while they're in a hurry to abandon the stronghold. Those guards should be enough to keep any unwanted outsiders away from the tunnels. Yeah, Darren says, and there's no way that he would have had enough time to set up a trap in a few minutes they had at their disposal. Since they've been announced of our escape, the only kind of trap they might have placed is a magical one, but those can be easily detected by anyone with a decent magical sense. Some of the ogres are already halfway down the scaffolding, Kate says. We don't have much time. I mean, I don't want to really wait, but what if there is a problem? I didn't listen to her the last time. But she doesn't really sound like a trustworthy person. Because, I mean, she did betray Luna, and she might be trying to get us caught. I mean, she's been kind of helpful, but... Screw Rocco, we can't afford to waste any more time here. I agree, Darren says. She can figure it out while we're on the move. Let's go. As we get closer to our goal, I'm starting to get second thoughts about Araka's warning. Maybe it would have been wiser to wait for a little while and hear what she had to say. We're far enough ahead of the ogres to avoid wasting 1 minute of our time. My thought process gets interrupted by a sudden explosion. I never got the chance to find out where it came from because I died the very next second after the boom. Okay, so not listening to her was a bad idea. That's okay. That's why we saved. Let's try that again. We could at least wait until the ogres reach the cave floor. They still need another 5 minutes to catch up to us after that, so we'll have plenty of time left to finish off the guards and exit the tunnels. Fine, Darren says, but if she doesn't have an answer until then, we're making a run for it. I got it, Araka says after a while. There's a very powerful magical explosion trap some 200 feet ahead of our position. Keep going. I'll tell you when to stop. What are you talking about, Darren says as we all start going forward. I'm not sensing any traps. That's because it's really well hidden, Araka says. I can barely sense any magic coming from it, but it's there. Here, I'll highlight the area so you know where it is. Soon after she's done talking, a small area in front of us gets covered in a blue light. When we get closer, Darren starts waving his sword in the air as if he were trying to catch the light with it. Well, I'll be damned, Darren says. Stand back. I'm going to disarm the trap. He then starts slicing through the air in a triangular motion a few times in a row. Suddenly we hear a loud popping noise, and then there's smoke coming out of nowhere. The smoke soon disappears, and Araka's blue light fades along with it. I think that should about cover it, Darren says. Yeah, the trap's gone, Araka says. Only the ogres are left. Give me a sec. I'll highlight them too. Enough! We hear the shaman's voice, and soon he materializes out of thin air along with the 5 ogre mages accompanying him. I don't know how you were able to see through my trap and through my invisibility spell, but now I know why you've been able to avoid all the patrols on your way to the treasure room. Oh, don't be so modest, shaman, Araka says as she changes the blue dot corresponding to the shaman into a green color. You must have had at least some idea of what was happening, otherwise you wouldn't have purposely taken the magical signature off of one of your troops when you came down here in order to trick my magical sense. What's that decoy that you left behind with your own magic signature anyway? A clone? No, the shaman says. It's one of my followers holding an artifact that copies my aura. Fascinating, Araka says as she changes the original green dot's color into blue. How did you find out where we were? Luna says. The captain and I had a telepathic link, which was meant to warn me once he left the realm of the living, the shaman says. You're going to pay for this, you little traitor. My followers are going to turn you all into ashes. He then raises his staff in the air, and the 5 other ogres step in front of him, casting fireballs in unison at us. Hadric and Darren both step in front as well in order to form our first line of defense. The dwarf focuses his aura in his fist, and he sends 2 of the fireballs right back at the ogres. Darren places his sword in front of him, absorbing the other 3 fireballs within it. He then slashes his flaming sword towards the ogres and sends a powerful fire beam at them, which burns them to a crisp. You've done it now, the shaman says with a dark look in his eyes as he looks at the ashes of his 5 followers. I didn't plan to use this on you, but you leave me no choice. He then smacks his staff on the ground, and the whole room gets filled with a thick gray fog. As the fog clears a bit, I realize that we are no longer standing in the middle of a cavern, but on an open plain, and it appears to be snowing? Okay. My eyes are not deceiving me. It really is snowing. There's a thick layer of snow on the ground, and the trees I see in the distance are all covered in snow as well. Could this be an illusion? Damn it, Araka says. I completely lost track of him. He went invisible again. I can't sense his aura at all. Actually, I can't feel any of your auras either. What the hell? You aren't the only one, Kate says. I've completely lost my magical sense as well. Could this have anything to do with the fog? No, Luna says. This is a shaman ritual. Basically, it's a very advanced mind-affecting spell. We're not in the real world anymore, and thus there are different rules. We're not missing only our magical senses, but also our magical powers. You were already wearing collars, so you can't tell the difference, but Araka and I cannot cast any spells at this moment. Also, it would appear that ranged weapons are not allowed either, since Bettery's crossbow is gone. I think magical items are still functional, though, since the shaman must have used his staff in order to turn invisible. How do we get out of here? Isn't this like some sort of dream, Hadric says. Can't we just pinch ourselves in order to wake up? You may not be familiar with these types of spells since they aren't all that common on the other continents, Iluna says. But this isn't anything like a dream. You can feel pain, you can concentrate without waking up. And if you die in here, you die in the real world as well. What's actually happening is that our souls from the ethereal plane are no longer directly connected to the earthen plane, but to another pocket universe from the ethereal plane. In order to reattach our souls to our bodies, we need to close our eyes, think about the last moments before we were transported here, get a clear image of those caverns in our heads, and then focus on it, with the conviction that the image in our heads represents the real world, while the world we are standing in is only an illusion. The image in our heads would then slowly start to become more vivid, until it would eventually replace the world in front of our eyes. If it's really that easy to get out of here, then why did the shaman bother to cast the ritual in the first place? Darren asks. Because everyone trapped in here needs to be willing to get out in order for the method to work, Iluna says. The problem is that the shaman trapped himself in here with us in order to prevent us from escaping until we get rid of him. We won't be able to return to the real world. Fortunately, shaman rituals aren't like other mind-affecting spells. The time flows differently here, which means that our year spent in this place amounts to only 1 second in the real world. We don't need to worry about the other ogres catching up to us and killing our real bodies while we're in here. We only need to focus on finding the shaman and killing him. How are we supposed to fight him if he's got complete control of this world? Hadric says. Wouldn't it be like fighting some sort of god? No, Luna says. The shaman does not have any control over this world. He only created it. Once he trapped himself in here, he became forced to follow the same rules as the rest of us. That is the nature of these shaman rituals. He doesn't have any magic either, except for the spell in his staff. And since he's been gracious enough to let us finish our conversation, I would suspect that he has no intention of fighting us head on. He must be waiting for something. As the fog disappears completely, we see that there are several pairs of red eyes shining in the dark depths of the forest. And we start to hear several low, continuous growls as the creatures are getting closer. When they come out of the woods, though, we learn that they are in fact wolves, so they are at least 3 times the size of normal ones, and their fur is black as coal. 5 of them start running towards our group, while Darren and Hadrick step in front of us and assume their battle stances. 3 of the wolves go right for them, but the other 2 circle around and go for Kate and Aluna instead. Darren defended himself with his shield from one wolf while he sliced the other one's head clean off. Hadrick punched the 3rd wolf in its mouth and sent 3 of its fangs flying, and the animal squealed in pain. Kate was waiting for the beast with her dagger in hand. The animal dashed towards her, but she managed to get behind it in a blink of an eye, and she slit its throat with a single motion. As her hands got drenched in the wolf's blood, the look in her eyes changed completely. When she started fighting the wolf, she's always had a sort of feral look about her, but this was more than that. This wasn't her just being ruthless or efficient. Those were the eyes of a beast hunting its prey. This must be why she was able to survive alone in the jungle at the age of 12 before she even had any magic. In order to avoid being hunted, she was forced to become the hunter instead. Aluna, who didn't have any weapons, started jumping around using Flower's acrobatic techniques in order to confuse the wolf to avoid getting bitten. Once Darren and Hadrick finished dealing with their own wolves, they came and killed the one attacking Aluna as well. This is why the shaman didn't take any actions, Hadrick says. He was too busy getting away from here so that his own wolves wouldn't attack him. Luckily for us, he left a trail of footsteps in the snow that we can easily follow. He then points to the trail of footsteps left by the shaman, which leads into the only part of the forest which doesn't seem to be crawling with wolves. If we all go to the shaman now, we'll have to fight the wolves every step of the way, Darren says. That would only make it easier for him to finish us off. Someone should go after the shaman alone, while the rest of us provide a distraction, preferably someone who is confident that he can defeat the shaman in a duel and who can handle himself against a few wolves in case they don't take... I'll take the bait. I mean... Barry doesn't have any weapons that I know of. Because, like, they said that his crossbow and stuff got taken. He hasn't been attacked, so there hasn't been any need for a weapon. Personally, I think anyone else would be more qualified, except for maybe Aluna, because she also doesn't have a weapon or magic use right now, so... I'll let someone else... I'll go, Hadrick says. I'm the fastest among us, and I should be able to handle the shaman without much trouble once I find him. Good, Darren says. We'll hold the wolves off here. Go, go, go! The dwarf dashes toward the forest, and within moments he disappeared behind the trees. Meanwhile, the wolves seem to have gotten bolder, because they are now starting to come out of the woods in greater numbers than before. After advancing slowly and carefully for a while, all of the wolves suddenly start running towards us at the same time, as if they'd received a signal to attack. The battle begins quickly, and Darren kills 3 of the wolves with a single slash of his sword. 4 of the other wolves have already started chasing Aluna, who is avoiding them to the best of her ability. As the fight goes on, I notice that Rose is being surprisingly calm given the situation. She makes sure that she's always in Darren's range so that he can defend her, but at the same time she tries to stay out of his way as much as possible. I can't just stand around and do nothing. I pull out my dagger and jump at one of the wolves, trying to stick my knife in its throat. Okay, Barry. Sure. The wolf jumps out of my way effortlessly, and then it almost immediately dashes back at me with its fangs bared. Do I even have any snap points available? No. Before it gets a chance to sink its teeth in my skin, I see a dagger passing through its head, and the beast falls lifeless on the ground afterward. Kate pulls out her dagger from the wolf's head, and she gives me an accusatory look. If you aren't used to dealing with wild animals, you should stay out of this and leave the fighting to the rest of us, Kate says. These beasts won't show you any mercy. She then gets behind another wolf and she sticks her knife into the back of its head, killing it instantly. While we were busy fighting, Aluna had gotten herself cornered by 3 of the wolves. She has her back pinned against a big rock, and the wolves are closing in on her, preparing to strike. Oh no. Aluna, catch! Kate shouts, and she throws the banshee her dagger. Aluna catches it from the air, and she quickly slides it below one of the wolves, holding her dagger with both hands and splitting the beast's belly in half. As she passes beneath it, she then jumps on the back of another wolf, and she sticks the knife in the back of its neck. As the animal falls, she jumps off of it, landing with a quick roll, and then she stabs the last of the wolves in its right eye. The banshee doesn't get any chance to rest because 4 other wolves are already coming her way. In the meantime, 3 of the wolves have managed to get past Darren and are now steadily approaching me and Kate. Here, take this, I tell Kate as I hand her my dagger. You'll probably put it to better use than me. I'll try to provide support by throwing rocks at the wolves. Understood, she says curtly as she takes my weapon. Kate then starts walking slowly towards the 3 wolves. When she gets close enough, she dashes to her right in order to confuse the animals, and then she runs her knife through one of the wolves' heads. After pulling out her dagger from the beast's skull, she rushes towards the others and kills it as well with a swift strike of her blade. I see that the 3rd wolf is about to catch Kate off her guard, so I quickly throw a rock at it, aiming for its head. The wolf manages to get out of the rock's way, but it loses its momentum, which gives Kate the opportunity to dash towards it and finish it off with one clean strike. All of a sudden, the whole world starts spinning around me, and then I soon find myself standing in the middle of a cave again, with all my friends beside me. They also seem to have just woken up because they're now looking around themselves to confirm that we are indeed back in the abandoned mines below the Overfort. At last, the illusion is broken. Hadrick must have found the shaman and forced him to cancel his spell. Before I get the time to fully regain my senses, a bright green light envelops Aluna, and then disappears almost as quickly as it appeared. The shaman then starts laughing hoarsely before coughing some blood on the cave floor. Oh. This is the end, Banshee, the shaman says as he coughs some more, for both of us. That spell I just cast on you is a curse of death, a shamanic spell that kills both the caster and its target. You likely have less than an hour left to live. My life was forfeited the moment I managed to get myself cornered within my own shaman ritual. But at least now I'll get the satisfaction of dragging the traitor who started all this mess to the underworld with me. He then laughs hoarsely again, and he starts to turn into ashes. Damn it, Hadrick says as he jumps towards the shaman, but all he gets to punch are his ashes, which are now slowly piling up on the floor of the caverns. Aluna was in a brief state of shock after the shaman's reveal, but then her expression darkened, and she went to set herself down on the floor with her back leaning against one of the cave's walls. What are you waiting for? She asks when she sees us looking at her. Get going. I'll hold the ogres off here. It's not like there's much else I can do with the little time I have left. It's true then? Rose asked what the ogre said. Yes, Aluna says. The curse is much too powerful for me to break with any of the spells I know. The shaman was being generous when he said that I'd get to live for another hour. From what I can tell, the curse will likely kill me in the next 15 minutes. No, Rose shouts. You can't give up. You just can't give up like this. There has to be a way to... Rose stops mid-sentence because she sees Darren starting to move towards Aluna. When he reaches her, he lifts his sword and looks at the banshee without uttering a word. Aluna looks back at him and she laughs. My apologies, he says. I nearly forgot that you wanted to have me purified. Well, here I am. Give it your best shot. With a little luck, after you kill me, you might be able to wake Flower up from her stasis so that she can say her goodbyes. Shut up, Darren says as he readies his sword. Darren, no! Rose shouts as Darren sticks his sword into Luna's right leg. A bright white light surrounds the banshee for a few seconds, and then a green smoke starts to come out of her, which evaporates into thin air soon afterwards. You, Aluna says in a state of complete shock. What did you... I broke the curse, Darren says. I'm both a white mage and an enchanter, remember? It's only natural that my sword can do something as trivial as dispelling an ordinary death curse without requiring me to use magic. This makes us even. You saved my life and I saved yours. Now we can move on with our lives and never speak of these events ever again. Agreed, Aluna says after a while, and she uses her healing magic to patch up her wound. Aluna, thank the gods, Rose says as she comes to give her a big hug. You're going to be okay now, right? There are no other curses? No, Aluna says, looking a little flustered. No other curses as far as I can tell. There's still the matter of the hordes of ogres approaching us, though. No need to worry about that, Adric says with a grin. I've got a plan, but first we all need to get out of the caves. Come on, move, move, move. As we all get out of the abandoned mines, Haddock jumps high into the air, and he punches the rocks above the cave's entrance. The whole rocky wall crumbles and completely blocks the path that leads to the caverns. That's it, Darren asks. That's your plan? Simple but effective, don't you think? Haddock says with a wide grin. Did it cross your mind that they might have warriors within their ranks that are capable of moving a few rocks out of their way? Darren says, not to mention all the mages that can just blow the rocks up. If they try to use explosions... If they try to use explosions, they'll just bury themselves in, Luna says. And from what I've seen while I was walking around the fort, the captain was their only warrior that had strength comparable to the dwarfs. They can still use air magic to move the rocks out of the way, but it'll take them a while. That gives us more than enough time to make ourselves scarce. There you have it, Hedrick says. Come on, let's get our backpacks. Wait, Araka says. I'm sensing 2 ogres hiding invisibly near the base of the hill. Are they in our way? Darren asks. No, but they might be trying to ambush us later. I think it's better to get rid of them, I say. If we let them live, they'll see which way we went and tell the other ogres when they get out of the mines. Maybe you're right, Darren says. One can never be too careful. Let's get this done real quick and then head for our backpacks. We follow Raka's directions to reach the 2 ogres in less than a minute. When they see that we have discovered them, the ogres dismiss their invisibility spell and try to attack us with their clubs. But Aluna beheaded them both with a single motion of her water whip, and then we all went back and headed towards the place where we buried our backpacks. Once we dig up all of our belongings, we waste no time and we begin our long journey back to the Sacred Woods ruins. We've been keeping a relatively fast pace for the first hour in order to make sure that we put enough distance between ourselves and the ogres. But after confirming several times that we weren't being followed, we started to slow down a bit. The sun had already set when we left the stronghold, but there were many stars in the sky, and the moon was almost full, so we decided to keep going until we were comfortable enough with the distance between ourselves and the ogre's territory. Healer, Luna says as we walk through the woods. After I released you from your cell, you promised that you wouldn't attack me until we escaped the fort. Now that we are at a safe enough distance from the ogres, you're no longer bound by that promise. Should I start to prepare my defenses? No, Darren starts to say, but he pauses. I don't really feel like fighting anymore today. I see, Luna says, eyeing him suspiciously. I'm so glad that we didn't run into any mages since we left the ruins, Rose says, trying to change the subject. It would have taken us a lot longer to complete our mission if we'd kept encountering people who attacked Kate out of the blue. Why are they attacking you specifically? Luna asks Kate. Aren't most people in this group part of the same tournament? Yes, but I'm the only one here who gets mistaken for a banshee, Kate says. Flower tried to teach me how to suppress my aura well enough to pass as a normal human, but I just couldn't keep up with her. That the girl has extraordinary talent when it comes to learning these things herself, but she is a very poor teacher, Luna says. The technique in itself isn't that difficult to master. You only need a little guidance to learn the basics. For instance, a good starting point would be to practice calming the flow of your aura first. Here, let me show you how it's done. Luna spent the next 2 hours teaching Kate how to suppress her aura, step by step, while we kept marching towards the ruins. By the time she was done, I could see that they'd made enormous progress. Kate's magical aura was barely noticeable when she suppressed it now, and you could very well confuse her with a normal human if you didn't examine her closely. The lessons Luna provided were interesting enough that even Hadrick and I joined in midway, and we both spent more than half an hour doing various exercises suggested by her to help us hide our auras from enemies. Once we found a good camping spot, we started to set up our tents. Hadrick said that the two of his spare tents needed to be fixed before they could be used again, so Rose offered to share her tent with Kate and Aluna for the night. When we started discussing about how to divide guard duty between ourselves, Kate, Rose, and Hadrick unanimously voted for me and Darren to take the first shift. That sounds suspicious. Their flawless synchronization when they voted for us was suspicious to say the least, but I decided not to call them out on it for the time being. Before we went to sleep, Hadrick insisted that we hold a toast to celebrate our victory, but nobody seemed to be in the mood for drinking, given how tired they were after today's events. Since nobody else offered, I told Hadrick that I'd share one drink with him before taking my shift. He pulled out 2 bottles of dwarven ale from his backpack, and then we went to sit ourselves down on 2 rocks that were facing each other away from the tents. When giants make a toast, they first spill a bit of ale on the ground, to also give the warriors fallen in battle something to drink, Hadrick says as he opens our 2 bottles. I always get in trouble when I do this in dwarven taverns, so it's refreshing to do it outside for a change. He raises his bottle. A toast, he says, for retrieving the chalice and coming one step closer to removing these blasted contraptions from our necks. We clink the 2 bottles, and then we both spill a bit of ale onto the ground before starting to drink. This is the first time I've tasted anything like this. I felt a strong burning sensation as the ale went down my throat, and I'm already starting to feel a little dizzy. This doesn't even compare to the strongest drinks available in taverns from the western continent. First time drinking dwarven ale? Hadrick asks with a grin as he sees the expression on my face. Yeah, I say, I knew this was supposed to be strong, but I guess I didn't expect it to be this much stronger than anything else I've drunk before. Aye, Hadrick says, this is why I spend so much of my time in the dwarven lands. Plus the locals are really nice. Most of the tavern owners know that I'm a giant in disguise, but they welcome me with open arms regardless. Part of that is probably because they'd be losing a quarter of their monthly profit if they'd stop receiving me, but still. Are giants not usually welcome in dwarven lands? Well, it's nothing official, but many of the dwarves don't really love us giants very much. There's a pretty bloody history between our 2 people, and even though we're at peace now, old grudges still remain. It also doesn't help when some smart-ass giant decides to go on a rampage in the middle of dwarven territory, just to satisfy his inferiority complex. Most of these troublemakers have been dealt with by our own warriors, but they usually get to do a lot of damage before they're caught, and it's not like the lives they've taken can just be brought back again. He pauses a bit to take a drink from his bottle. But enough about politics, he says. We should be discussing more important matters. Like, for example, what's going on between you and Rose. Is it just me, or have you 2 been getting a little closer in these past 2 days? We've been getting closer, but not in the way you might think. Oh, I get it, Hadrick says. So I'm guessing you're not all that interested in Rose, then. Could it be that you prefer the wilder types, like Kate? Forget Rose and Kate, I say. What I think we all want to know is what's going on between you and Araka. Have you proposed to her yet? The dwarf laughs. Now you're asking the right questions, he says, and he takes another drink from his bottle. I've been meaning to do it, but I just couldn't find the right moment. I'm still thinking of an excuse to give Flower or Luna to lend me the amulet for a while so the 2 of us can have some quality time alone together. He pauses, and then we both take another drink. But in all seriousness, though, Hadrick says, if it hadn't been for her intervention earlier today, I'm not sure how well I would have handled myself against that ogre captain. I have no doubts that she'd kill me without hesitation if she ever got out of that amulet, but I guess I do owe her one for now. I've never really had to work together with others to take care of my enemies before. I usually travel and fight alone, so I'm not really used to these kinds of things. But I'll admit that being part of a group has been a really nice change of pace for me. To be perfectly honest, I didn't really come to this tournament to win the Magium. I came here for the experience mostly, and I'd say it's been going pretty well so far. What about you, Barry? What are your plans in case you actually win this tournament? Well, I'm going to use the Magium to become a mage. Yeah, I got that, but I meant afterwards. What do you plan to do after you become a mage? I want to use my magic to help people. Helping people, huh? Hedrick says. That sounds a lot like something Darren would say. I hadn't really pegged you as the do-gooder type, but then again, I might have gotten the wrong first impression. Helping people is all well and good, but you should take care to not overdo it. You should never start completely putting aside your needs and desires for the sake of others, or you'll risk ending up as boring as Darren. Now that's just mean, I hear Rose's voice coming from behind me. What would Darren say if he heard you talk about him like that? Well, it's not like I've been keeping my opinion of him a secret, Hedrick says. Plus, that doesn't mean that I don't respect him or anything. It's just that him and I aren't that compatible personality-wise. In fact, you'd probably find out that his opinion of me isn't that stellar either, if you'd asked him directly. But enough about that. You've come here to join us, I hope. I've got many more bottles of ale stashed up in my backpack, so there's no need for you to hold back. Actually, no, Rose says. I only came here because I had a few things to say to Barry before going to sleep. Say no more, Hadrick says, and he gets up from his rock. Please take my seat. I was just about to go back to my tent. He then raises his bottle again. Cheers, Barry, he says as we both clink our bottles once more, and then we chug down the last of our ale. Okay, Barry, listen closely, Rose says in a low voice as Hadrick heads for his tent. I think you might have already realized by now that... She paused mid-sentence as she looks at my face. Barry, are you drunk? She asks. Maybe a little, I answer her. Rose giggles. Hold on, she says. I've got some herbs in my backpack that'll get you back in shape in no time. And you won't have to worry about a hangover either. I'll be right back. After she's done searching her backpack, she comes back with a fistful of red leaves, and she tells me that I need to chew on them for 30 seconds. Once I'm done, I realize that my dizziness is completely gone and I can think clearly again. So as I was saying, Rose says, you might have already realized by now that Kate, Hadrick, and I had a little discussion before voting for you and Darren to take the first night shift. I'm sorry that we didn't invite you as well, but someone needed to stay with Darren so that he wouldn't get suspicious. Yeah, I kind of figured that something was wrong when I saw how well in sync you three were. I say, so what's this all about then? Well, you know how Luna said that Flower still needs to remain in stasis until at least tomorrow evening? Yeah, I remember. The thing is that Aluna hasn't slept at all since before her shift last night, and I am starting to get a bit worried. I think she's afraid that Darren will kill her in her sleep if he sees her vulnerable, and she no longer has Flower to protect her while she's not awake. She probably only continued to travel with us because she would be in much more danger alone than in a group, considering all the powerful mages roaming around the continent right now, and the fact that she's too tired to keep suppressing her aura until tomorrow. So you want me to keep Darren busy while you and Kate try to convince her to take a nap? Yes, that's why I persuaded Hadrick to say that 2 of his tents are unusable, so that Kate and I could sleep in the same tents as Aluna. I think we can get her to fall asleep if we promise that Kate will keep an eye on Araka's amulet to see if she tries to escape again. I sigh. I know that Darren isn't always the sharpest tool in the shed, I say, but I think you're underestimating him a little. I'd be surprised if he didn't already figure out your plan. I don't care if he did or did not figure out my plan, Rose says. What I want is for him to stay away from Aluna so that she can finally get a good night's sleep. I don't think that Darren would try to hurt her while she's unconscious, but keeping him as far away from her as possible is the only way Aluna can feel safe right now. I'm really sorry that I forced you into this, but I'd much rather have you with Darren than Hadrick, and I can't join you because I need to stay by Aluna's side, since I'm probably the only one that she somewhat trusts in our group. But if you don't feel like going through with this, I understand. I'll try to see if Hadrick... No, that's not what I meant, I say. Look, here's what we're going to do. I'll make sure that Darren doesn't come near your tent during our shift. But if he gives any hint of having figured out what you're up to, I'm not going to start making up lies about it. If he asks, I'll tell him the truth. Deal? Rose smiles and shakes my hand. Deal, she says. All right, then. I say, well, in that case, I'll be off to begin my night shift. Wish me luck. Good luck, Barry, Rose says, and thank you. She then heads towards her tent, while I grab my crossbow and start walking towards the place where Darren was sitting and polishing his weapon. Took you long enough, he tells me as I sit myself on the grass beside him. Did Rose tell you to keep me busy while they try to put the Banshee to sleep? So he really did have it all figured out. Yeah, I say, she just finished giving me the briefing. Darren sighs as he slowly stops polishing his sword. Listen, Barry, he says, I realize that I've been a bit of an ass lately, even more so than usual, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Hearing Darren give me a heartfelt apology is feeling about as natural as seeing a fire elemental bathe in a mountain spring. However, he does appear to be sincere about this. It's okay, I tell him. Don't worry about it. No, it's not okay, Darren says. I've been stubbornly hanging on to the idea that banshees cannot possibly be trustworthy, and I was almost willing to start a fight with you because of it, even after clear evidence has been presented to me of the contrary. I still refuse to believe it, and that almost ended up costing my life. You're talking about that time when you were hanging from a wooden beam in the caverns and Aluna offered you her hand? Yes, Darren says. Come to think of it, I say, you didn't start acting this way only after meeting Aluna. You've been acting strangely ever since Azarius told us about artificial mages and the Beacon of Hope. I pause for a little. Now that I think about it, I continue, I don't remember you speaking a single word to Kate after you found out that she was an artificial mage and not a banshee. Darren looks at me for a few moments as realization dawns upon him. Barry, you're right, Darren says. I really haven't spoken with Kate at all since that day. I don't know what's wrong with me. First answer's kind of funny. Maybe you've been subconsciously resenting her for proving you wrong? What are you saying? Darren asks. That I've been blaming her for not turning out to be a real banshee like I thought she'd be? I mean, I know that my pride can get in the way of my reasoning sometimes, but I wouldn't. It doesn't matter why you did it, I tell him. What's important is what you plan to do about it now. Yeah, Darren says. I guess you're right. He pauses a bit before he continues. Tomorrow I'll try to make things right, he says. I don't think I could bring myself to apologize to the banshee, but I'll try my best to get along with her tomorrow, and to show her that I no longer retain any hostility towards her. As for Kate, I'll need some time to think about how I'm going to approach this. But whatever happens, I'm not planning to let things go on like this. Thanks for hearing me out, Barry. I think I'm feeling a little better now. It was a few hours later that Kate and Hadrick came to take over our shift. I asked Kate in private about how things went with Aluna, and she told me that the banshee was a bit reluctant at first, but they managed to get her to fall asleep eventually. They couldn't convince her to shut off her alarm, though, so she'd keep waking up every hour or so in order to check up on Araka, but at least she got enough rest to pull through the next day. After a good night's sleep, we all got up early in the morning, packed our tents, and resumed our journey, aiming to reach the ruins by sundown. Since we knew exactly which way we were headed this time around, we could afford to keep going without stopping to look for every single one of Flower's markers, which saved us quite a few hours on our way back. Due to everything that's happened in the last few days, our group was visibly starting to become a lot more closely knit. Even though I couldn't say that we all got along perfectly, the fact of having survived through such a hardship together by trusting and relying on each other seemed to have developed a certain bond between us. Even Araka was starting to act more like a member of the group. As a reward for her cooperation yesterday, her locket was left open, so every now and then she would join our conversations by adding her unique commentary, even though most of it was either somehow tied to the atrocities she committed during the still winter, or a dark joke of some kind. Sounds about right. Throughout our journey back into the ruins, Darren had tried on multiple occasions to initiate casual conversation with Aluna, but his awkward attempts at trying to make up with her only managed to make her even more suspicious of his motives. Despite his boasting, however, he still didn't utter a single word to Kate by the time we'd reached our destination. The fox was quite surprised when she learned that we'd returned with the chalice. I don't think she was really expecting us to pull it off. However, she kept her word and removed all of our collars upon confirmation that the artifact we brought back was indeed the one she was looking for. Since we didn't really feel like spending any more time than necessary in this place, we waved goodbye to the fox and the leopard. We started heading out of the Forbidden Forest, and we prayed that we'd never see either of them again for the rest of our lives. Once we put some good distance between ourselves and the edge of the Forbidden Forest, we decided to set up camp near a small river, in an area without many trees. Flower, who had recently woken up from her stasis, was now being filled in on the details of what had happened since she'd been put to sleep. I'm so glad that Petal's plan worked out in the end, Flower says after she hears the whole story. I got a little worried when she told me that she needed to put me in a stasis for 2 days, but I decided to trust her judgment. Wait, did you just say Petal's plan? Kate asks. Didn't you say before that both of you worked on this plan? Well, Flower says, feeling a little embarrassed. The truth is that Petal is the one who usually makes all of our strategies. I just follow her lead most of the time. At first, I didn't think she would help out this time around, since she was always making sure to keep her distance and not get involved with you guys. But then something happened that made her change her mind in that night before we reached the fort. She wouldn't tell me what happened exactly, but all of a sudden she became so much more active in planning the whole operation, and she even took care to minimize the risks to your safety. I don't know what got into her, but I'm really glad that things turned out the way they did. Rose smiles at me. I think we both know what made Aluna change her mind before we reached the ogres. It seemed that our discussion in private with her during her night shift had a lot more of an impact than we'd originally thought. I mean, it's Aluna's business if she wants to tell Flower. After some careful consideration, I decided to keep Luna's secret and spare her the embarrassment. Wait, so you're saying that you're not the one who convinced Luna to carry out the plan? Darren asks Flower. No, like I said, she was the one who, Flower starts to say, but then she gasps loudly. Did you just call Petal by her real name? The girl asks, seemingly in a state of shock. Yeah, I guess, Darren says. Does that mean that you're friends now? Flower asks. No, Darren and Luna both shout simultaneously. Oh my god, it's true! You really are friends now! You should have seen them bickering like two lovebirds during the whole trip back, Araka says. It's like they're both made for each other. Wait, your locket's open? Flower asks Araka. How come your locket's open? Petal never leaves it open. Heh, Araka says. That is a thing of the past. Due to my outstanding performance during our last mission, I've been promoted to a full-time member of the group. That means that you all need to listen to my opinions from now on. For example, I think that before going to sleep, we should all hunt a few animals and put their heads on spikes all around our camp in order to ward off invaders. Don't push your luck, Luna says. Oh, gods, Flower says. So many things have happened since I was asleep. I can barely keep track of them anymore. Hold on, I need to write all this down. After finishing our conversation with Flower and setting up all of our tents, we all took a little break to eat some food. Since the girl had magical energy to spare after her long nap, she offered to conjure for each of us a dish of our own choosing. I wasn't particularly hungry, so I just asked for some lemon cakes. Everyone else went all out, however, and asked for the most extravagant dishes that came to their minds, like manticore ribs seasoned with a variety of spices, or griffin wings coated with honey. Everyone except Kate, that is, given that she hadn't really had the luxury of ever tasting any food other than the one she hunted herself. She'd simply asked for roasted duck legs, and she went to eat by herself on a log a few dozen feet away from our camp. After eating my fill of lemon cakes, I went over to Kate's side to see how she was doing. I caught her staring blankly at one of the trees in front of her, and she didn't even notice me until I placed myself right in front of her. Still thinking about Diane, I asked her. Kate looked a bit taken aback by my straightforwardness, but in the end she decided to answer me honestly. Yes, she says, she's been on my mind ever since I woke up in those ruins. I've been trying my best to not let it show given the situation we were in. Here, I tell her, have some lemon cakes. I've already eaten my fill. Thanks, she says as she accepts my offer. You know, I say, after you guys fell unconscious due to Diane's attack, I managed to stay awake for a little while longer because of my higher resistance to electricity. When she hears my words, Kate raises her head and starts watching me intently. I saw the Lasathe she was working with, I continued. They both wanted to have us killed, but your friend stood up to them. She said she'd kill them if they laid a finger on either of us. She's the reason why we're still alive right now. Kate laughs. And also the reason why we've almost been killed by a fox goddess and by a fort full of ogres in the past few days, she says. And I get why you're telling me this, and I'm grateful for your concern. But I already suspected that what she said and did was her way of trying to look out for me. That, however, still does not excuse her behavior and the way she put us all in even greater danger through her actions. She's always been like this. She would not think twice before doing what she thought was right, but it would often only result in her making things even worse than they were before. I swear I'm going to give her one hell of a beating when I see her again. Does that mean you're still going to participate in this tournament? Yes, She pauses. I no longer have any leads on Diane's whereabouts, Kate says, and if the organizers eventually announce some objectives, I'll have at least try and complete their task to avoid getting disqualified for lack of participation. Until then, I was thinking of sticking around with you guys. That is to say, if... She pauses again. If you'll have me, she continues. Of course we'll have you, Kate, I say. I know that Darren has been acting a little strange lately, but trust me when I say that... I pause mid-sentence because I see that Darren is now heading towards us with a very uncomfortable look on his face. Speaking of the devil, I tell Kate in a low voice. Listen, Darren says, looking at Kate when he gets closer. There's something I've been meaning to tell you for a while, but I couldn't really find the right moment. Oh, gods, you're not going to propose to me, are you? Kate says. Damn it, no, Darren says, and then he immediately tries to regain his composure. That's not what I meant. It's just that lately I haven't really talked to you. Actually, I haven't even spoken a word to you for days. Really? Kate says, looking genuinely surprised. I never noticed. Darren looks like he's about to lose his cool again, but this time he managed to rein in his emotions. I stopped talking to you right after Zarius told us that you were an artificial mage, he says. I was just so convinced that you were a banshee from the very beginning, and after I heard what he said, He pauses. I was wrong, he says after a while, deciding not to continue his previous sentence. Even if on the surface I was acting like your friend, in reality I never let my guard down around you, and I was expecting you to betray us and turn into a monster at any moment. And to make matters worse, after learning the truth, instead of trying to make amends, I spent my time sulking like some 4-year-old who dropped his candy bar in a sewer. I realize that this is way beyond late now, but I couldn't just let things go on like this forever. The reason why I came here to you tonight is that I wanted to apologize. It looked like it took every ounce of his strength to utter that last word. I don't think I've seen him this tense even when we were battling the Hydra in the Lasathi ruins. I'm sorry, what was that? Kate says you'll have to repeat that last word you said because I could barely hear it. Damn it, woman, Darren says. You know very well what I said. Don't make me repeat it. Now, do you accept my apology or not? Immediately after Darren finishes his sentence, Kate starts to laugh, but her laughter is sounding much more natural than ever before. When he first heard her, Darren looked as if he were about to blow his fuse again, but then he realized that there was no hint of malice in Kate's laughter, so he eventually calmed down. I'm sorry, Kate says as she struggles to contain her laughter. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mock you. It's just that I didn't think that this would be the kind of thing that would trouble you so much. Of course I accept your apology. I was being honest when I said I never noticed you ignoring me all this time. The two of us never really talked all that much. So none of this really seemed strange to me. But I really appreciate you coming out to me like this. Thank you. This made me feel a lot better. She smiles. I'm not sure what this is all about. We hear Hadrick's voice come from the Darren, but I'm willing to bet that this would be the best moment to finally hold that victory celebration. He then places 5 bottles of dwarven ale on the ground and grins at us. I suppose so, Kate says, smiling. Hold on, Darren says. Our collars might have been removed, but we're still in dangerous territory here. What if we're attacked by some mages or monsters after we have our little party? Who's going to defend us from our enemies if we're all plastered? There's no need to worry about that, Rose says as she approaches us holding a small pouch in her left hand. These leaves I have in my bag are a natural remedy for drunken stupors. You just need to chew on them for half a minute and all dizziness will be gone in a flash, without even having to worry about a hangover afterwards. Perfect, the dwarf says. Then there's no need for us to hold back. I'll go bring more bottles. Oh, is that dwarven ale? Flower says as she sees the 5 bottles lying on the ground. I've always wanted to try dwarven ale. No ale for you, young lady, Hadrick says. Little kids should not be drinking alcoholic beverages of any kind. It's not good for you. But I'm not a little kid, Flower says. I'm 30 years old. You may be 30 years old, but your alcohol tolerance is that of a 9-year-old, Luna says. You can barely even stand on your feet after drinking a glass of wine. Petal, you're not helping, Flower says as the rest of us start to laugh. You're not helping at all. After the long overdue celebration was finally over, we each went to sleep in our respective tents, except for Hadrick and Darren, who took the first shift. For those few hours while we drank together, it felt hard to believe that we'd been risking our lives fighting ogres just one day prior. It almost felt like I was back at home, spending a night out in a tavern with some friends, far away from all the madness of this tournament. It was nice to have a night like this for a change, and who knows, maybe the worst is all behind us, and every night from now on will be like this as well. A man is allowed to dream, right? With these final thoughts, I put my head on the pillow, and I awoke the next morning feeling completely refreshed. This time around, I got the lucky draw, and I didn't need to take any shifts, which was a nice change of pace from all the sleepless nights I've had lately. Since we didn't have a fixed time limit anymore, we all decided to sleep in the day, so it was already 10 o'clock in the morning by the time I got out of my tent. Taking a look around the camp, it seemed that everyone else had already gotten up for some time, and they'd just about to finish their breakfast. He awakens at last, Darren says as he sees me get out of my tent. Did you enjoy your 10 hours of uninterrupted sleep, Barry? It's too bad you missed breakfast, though. Flower really outdid herself this time, too. Her food-making skills are simply divine. But don't worry, I'm sure we can still scrounge up some cold leftovers for you to eat if you're really hungry. That's mighty generous of you. Well, you know me, Darren says, always looking out for my fellow man. And the fact that this is the universal credo of all white mages is what makes it so ironic. I tell him as I take out some dry meat and an apple out of my backpack and start to eat. Barry, why didn't you tell me you woke up? Flower calls out to me, disappointed as she sees me finishing my meal. I was waiting for you before making your breakfast so I wouldn't get cold. Yeah, well, Darren forgot to mention that. You were still taking orders, I say. Don't sweat it. I wasn't really all that hungry anyway. Aw, but I was going to surprise you with a traditional dish from your homeland. Traditional, I asked. Yes, I was going to make quail eggs with ham and bagelberry cheese. That's less of a traditional dish from the Western continent and more of a select meal only eaten by a handful of nobles on our continent. The rest of us usually just eat whatever we have lying around on the pantry for breakfast. Huh, Flower says. Well, the more you know. After everyone's finished eating, we decided to hold a meeting and establish what our plans were now that we were finally free of our collars. The three of us had already promised Rose that we'd escort her safely to the hometown, Darren says as he points towards me and Kate. So that's where we're headed right now. Hadrick, Flower, you have no obligations to keep traveling with us, so we can part ways here if you want. Actually, traveling with this group has provided me with the most fun I've had in years, Hadrick says. The objectives of this tournament still haven't been announced, so I don't really have anything specific to do until then. If it's all the same to you, then I'd rather tag along. How about you, Flower? Kate says. Well, Flower says, looking a little hesitant, I wouldn't want to be a bother to anyone. What, are you kidding me? Hadrick says. You can spit fire, jump on walls, and make food out of nothing. Who would be crazy enough to not want you in their group? Nobody here would ever turn you away after how much you've helped us, Flower, Rose says. And don't you even for a second think that you could ever be a bother to us. The question here is what you want to do. Would you like to keep traveling with us? Yes, Flower says, beaming. I would love to. And Aluna? Kate asks. How does she feel about all this? All of her eyes are fixed upon the girl as her own eyes turn bright blue, and Aluna starts looking around her nervously. I guess it wouldn't hurt us too much to accompany you for a while longer, she says. It's settled then, Darren says. Pack your bags. We're leaving in half an hour. Now hold on there, Araka says. Is nobody going to ask me how I feel about all this? What if I told you that I am deeply unsatisfied with this group's abysmal kill per hour ratio, and that I only consider continuing our collaboration if you promise to work on proving it, huh? What then? We all stare at Araki's amulet for a few seconds until Hadrick decides to break the silence. All right, then, he says, it's time for us to start dismantling our tents. Meet you all back here in 30 minutes. Hey, Araka says as we all start heading towards our tents. Hey, don't you dare ignore me. Do you hear me? Come back here. I'm not done complaining yet. It took me a while, but after I got done with my tent and backpack, I headed back towards our meeting spot where everyone except Kate seemed to have already arrived. As I got closer, I saw that Flower was currently spinning Araka's amulet by the chain with a displeased expression on her face. This chain is starting to get old, she says. We'll have to get a new one the next time we're in a city. That's great, Araka shouts. Now, if you're done testing the chain's durability, maybe you could stop with the spinning. Oh, right. Sorry, Flower says as she grabs the amulet and puts it back around her neck. I forgot you had motion sickness. Wait, seriously? Hadrick asks with a laugh. That almighty invincible Banshee can't handle a little spitting? It's because she's trapped in the amulet, Luna says. It's messing with her senses. She didn't have any problems like this when she was possessing animal bodies. Oh, good. Kate's here, Darren says as he sees Kate approaching us. I guess we should be good to go then. Where are we headed, exactly? Hadrick asks. The city of Thilius, Rose says. It's a small harbor town near the southern coast. It's lovely this time of year. Okay, I'm here, Kate says as she joins the rest of us. Let's get going. Wait, Flower says. I just remembered something. The plates. I forgot to wash the plates. Who cares about the plates? Darren asks. Can't you just conjure new ones out of nowhere like you do with the food? Yeah, but it would be a waste to just leave them here, Flower says. They sell for a pretty good price on the market. This won't take long, I promise. I'll just pick them up quick and wash them in the river. I'll be right back. You know, I've always wondered about something, Hadrick tells Darren as Flower rushes past him. If they call you guys white mages, then shouldn't necromancers be called black mages? You know, to keep the theme going. Actually, that's a common misconception, Darren says. This has nothing to do with warriors of the light fighting the forces of darkness. The only reason why white mages are called that like that is because of the bright light that appears when they cast most of their spells. It's not really an official name, but I guess it kind of stuck. Some white mages with a stick up their arse sometimes even get offended when they are called like that, and they... Darren stopped talking because a familiar figure had just appeared out of thin air in front of him. A boy with his eyes closed, his hands in his pockets, and a polite smile on his face. "Greetings, friends," Eden says. "I come bearing news." "Eden," Darren says with a frown. Now, there's no need to be so hostile. I only came to help." "Wait, how did you find us?" I ask him. "By tracing your auras, of course," Eden says. "I just finished my business on the other side of the island, and I thought I'd pop by to visit." "How could you possibly have identified us just by our auras from that far away?" I say. "Our auras are much more complex than you may think, Barry," Eden says. "Most people only use them to learn of a person's magical prowess, and maybe to understand their basic emotional state, but a person's aura is capable of showing us much more than that. With enough practice, you will see that each person's aura is unique, and it can be used to track them down from a great distance. If your magical sense is sharp enough, mine happens to cover the whole island of Varathia." "You mean to say that you can find out any person's whereabouts at any given time?" I say. "Yes, but like I said, auras can be used for many other things," Eden says. "For example, if you study a person's aura fluctuations carefully enough, you can tell if they're lying or not. Besides that, you can also find out their age, their race, and their mental state. If you tamper with a person's aura enough, you can even stop them from aging. Speaking of auras, Barry, I happened to see your aura's very close proximity to two Lasathi a few days ago. Did you remember to give them my message?" Crap, he's talking about the two Lasathi that were with Diane. His stupid message was the last thing on my mind at the time. What am I supposed to tell him now? Lying. So I wasn't unconscious. "I'm sorry, I was barely even able to talk at that point. I'd just been electrocuted." "That is true," Eden says. "I could tell even from afar that you were barely able to hold on to your senses at the time." "Yes, exactly," I say. "That's why I couldn't." "However," Eden interrupts me, "if delivering my message had been your first priority, you would have surely been able to find the resources necessary to fulfill your task." "Wait, listen," I say. "We can find other Lasathi. We can still deliver the message." "Barry," Eden says, "I'm starting to get the impression that you're not taking me very seriously." "What are you talking about?" I say. "Of course I'm taking you seriously." "This will not do," Eden says. "How am I supposed to get my point across if you're not taking me seriously?" "Listen," I say, "I get why you may be thinking this, but trust me when I say that." "I know," Eden says with a smile all of a sudden. "I should kill one of your friends. That should make you take me more seriously." "What did you just say?" I ask him. All of a sudden I hear Rose starting to gasp for air loudly. "Rose," Darren says, "what's happening?" Rose tries to say something, but she doesn't manage to get enough air in her lungs to articulate her words properly. "You shouldn't force yourself to speak, Rose," Eden says. "After all, the airways to your lungs are currently slowly closing themselves in. You should focus all your efforts into breathing as much air as possible." "You bastard," Darren shouts as he pulls out his sword. "I'm going to kill..." Before he gets to finish his sentence, Darren falls to the ground, completely paralyzed, and the same thing happens to everyone else except me and Rose immediately afterwards. "Your friends can't help you this time, Barry," Eden says to me. "What are you going to do?" A feeling of panic overwhelms me all of a sudden. This can't be happening. This can't be happening. We were finally rid of the callers. We were rid of them. Everything was going to be okay. Why did you have to come back? Why? "Time is running out, Barry," Eden says. "Your friend is at the end of her rope. How are you going to stop me?" How am I going to stop him? I still have no idea how he powered up my stat device when I fought the dragon, and I don't know any of his weaknesses. Does he even have weaknesses? Are there any words that can get me out of this like last time? What would make him let her go? What would convince him to let this slide? What am I supposed to do? All of a sudden, there's a loud noise of plates shattering to our right. And Rose finally managed to take a deep, long breath, as both Eden and I turned to identify the source of the sound. Flower is just standing there with an expression of pure shock on her face and with a dozen shattered plates lying at her feet. "Well, if it isn't a Luna of the Sacred Woods massacre," Eden says, smiling. "It's been 20 years, I believe. How have you been?" Flower's expression quickly changes into one of pure rage as her eyes turn bright red and her aura starts to fluctuate violently. "You!" she shouts as she points at Eden. "I'll kill you! I'll kill you!" She then jumps towards Eden and starts throwing a flurry of fireballs at him as the Stillwater casually dodges each one of them without even using any magic. Flower then shoots a beam of fire that engulfs Eden completely, but it simply passes by him and leaves him unharmed. "You killed them," Flower says. "You killed them all! Bring them back! Do you hear me? Bring them back!" She then conjures a dragon made entirely of fire that flies towards Eden and starts to attack him with its claws. Flower also joins the battle up close, and she tries to punch the Stillwater with her flaming fists. "Illuna," Eden says as he parries the girl's strikes with one hand and the dragon's with the other. "Do you think you can put a stop to this? I'm kind of starting to lose my patience here." For a second, the girl's eyes turned bright blue, and I could clearly see the fear in them. The next moment, Flower stopped moving, and she looked as if she were being held against her will by an invisible force. "Let me go, Petal," the girl says as tears start to form in her eyes while she struggles to break free. "Let me go! I have to kill him! I have to!" After trying in vain to free herself for a few more seconds, Flower then turns towards us. "It's him," she tells us. "Don't you see? He's the one. He's the one who destroyed the city of Ulmnar." Oh, shit. Well, that's a twist. Shit, goodness. Poor Flower. Was her family there? I don't know. That's a lot to process. Man, this has been a long one. These seem to be getting progressively longer, though, so guess that'll be it for this one. We'll figure out what's going on with Eden and Flower in the next one. But Barry only really died once, so I think that's pretty good considering how long we've kept him alive. It was just a really hard judgment call because I don't really know if I can trust the amulet person, because she seems to want to get us in trouble a lot, but at the same time, she was being helpful. So, and I wasn't sure. Plus, ogres on the tail. We really didn't want to die, so I don't know. It was frustrating. Anyway, that'll be it for this one, guys. Go out and spread the love, because love always wins, and I'll see you in the next one.